Whether you're optimizing a workflow for productivity or organizing your space for a neat look, you can usually find all sorts of gadgets or fixtures to make things work for you. But what if the problem is so niche that there's just literally nothing you can buy that can solve for it? Well, you'll never see a more extreme example of this than here. Meet Aaron, one of YouTube's top tech reviewers, mainly focused on smartphones. Aaron, what's your problem?
Okay, so don't laugh, but we have too many smartphones. I've been testing and reviewing gadgets for like 11 years straight, and they've just kind of gone out of control. I started storing them on the bottom shelf, and they've just kind of, over the years, piled up and exploded outwards. And you think it's funny, but no one makes a smartphone shelf.
Well, that's where I come in. In this video, we'll be fixing this problem with some DIY. Now, the simple way to store such a vast array of phones would be to add some dividers to a normal shelf so that the phones can be stored a bit like books, similar to how they're currently stored. However, this is less than optimal because not only does it look messy, but the phones leaning against each other like this can actually lead to scratches and damage to either their cameras or the screens, which is pretty problematic. So the first challenge to overcome is finding a way of storing them that allows each one to be separate from the next. Some kind of upright wiring system might work well for this, a bit like a CD rack, but honestly, I don't think it looks very good at all, and we can do better. Now, this is where 3D printing can really come into its own, because it's quick and easy to design and print all sorts of intricate mechanical mechanisms to find something that works. My goal here is to come up with some kind of clip, with the flexibility of the filament allowing it to tightly squeeze the phones and keep them upright. And honestly, this is looking pretty promising. The trouble, however, is that it takes up about 4.5 centimeters, so it's not very space efficient and thus wouldn't allow room for all of Aaron's phones. There is a way I can trim it down though. You see, as long as there is a flat surface against which the phone can be pushed, it should force the phone upright. And with a bit of tweaking to the original clip, I've distilled it to an elongated comma shape, with the intention being to have it fitted inside a wooden channel. This appears to work just as well as before, only now with a much tighter footprint, allowing 32 phones per metre of shelf, an important number for later. Now, obviously we'll want to use something a bit more aesthetically pleasing than fiberboard for the proper shelves, so I've got some lengths of real walnut, which has a beautiful grain structure. To keep the slots of each phone neat, precise and regular, I'm having them cut on a CNC router. Walnut is a really tough wood to get through though, so it takes about 3 hours for a single metre of shelf. But the wait is worth it as it looks great, particularly after some cleanup. To really finish it off though, it needs some kind of wood oil. The stuff I'm using here is satin so that after a couple of coats, it has a sheen but not a shine, preventing it from looking too plasticky and really enriching the wood's colour. With the 3D printed comma clips inserted, the phones slide in as expected. Looking good. Now, the area that Aaron has set aside for these shelves is 3 meters wide, and to make the best use of this space, that means that I have to make 18 meters of these CNC milled parts. Oh joy! The scale of this project really hits home here, as that's about 51 hours of milling, 20 hours of changeover and cleanup, not to mention 3D printing a massive amount of comma clips. These at least were fairly straightforward thanks to having 2 Prusa's on the go at once, and they're reliable printers, so I could just leave them to it in the background without having to worry, and I've ended up with a massive pile, as you can see. Now, to make things a bit easier to set up on the fitting day, the shelves themselves are attached to some MDF backing with the help of my dad. One of the benefits of using this backing method is that it allows me to make some routing channels on the back for some big thick wires, the reason for which are to provide power for this shelving system's special trick, a selection system based around individually addressable LED strips. You are watching DIY Perks after all. Now, programming for this is way beyond my skill set, but my good friend Lamar has been working hard on some software for it with a goal to have it run off a Raspberry Pi, a small programming board that's perfect for this kind of task. The software basically runs off an SD card, and one of its features is that it can run a server on the local network and hold a database of the installed phones. When a device loads this server's web page, it presents this database as a selection system where a particular phone can be tagged to a particular slot. The software can then light it when requested by the app, with some cool animations also being possible. The thinking behind this boils down to the sheer quantity of phones that Aaron needs to store, and it should be handy for when he needs to quickly grab an old phone to compare it to the latest model, for example. Now, both the Raspberry Pi and LED strips need 5 volts for power, and as there's so many LEDs, the power supply has to be pretty beefy, 400 watts in this case. Now, for mounting everything, I've made an aluminium frame for it, which can house the Raspberry Pi as well. Now, the intention for this is for it to fit underneath the bottom shelf, and this has a slightly different design from the main unit. These are sort of archive shelves intended for phones that are cheap and of little priority, hence the compromise between the potential for scratches and dense storage. And with that, the last thing to do is fit some mirrors in place to cover the MDF. Thanks to the shelves being divided up into 3 units, it's relatively easy to manoeuvre them into position, with the plan being to screw them directly into the timber behind the wall for a really secure fit. Having the MDF backing really helped here, although as with anything of this nature, there are always going to be minor problems that need to be overcome. So we had a bit of a problem where the wall actually had a bit of a lump in it, and it was stopping the shelves from fitting flush. So what we've done is actually used some little spacers, and these just sit behind the shelves, and put them further forward away from the wall, and they should hopefully line up now. So with the main unit installed, it's time for the bottom archive section, with the middle one of course being used to support the power system for the LEDs. Speaking of which, these need to now be chained together so that the timing signal can travel down their length, and as you can see, I'm using some copper tape to get this signal to jump to the next shelf down as needed. Okay, so we've got the shelves up on the wall now, and it looks incredible. We've still got some protective film on the mirrors, so it will look a lot better in the next part of this video, but we'll get to that in a bit. But for now, we're going to be testing out the holding system for the phones. So we're just trying the iPhone here, and hopefully it should just slide in. Perfect.
And that is perfectly straight. Look at this.
So what happens is that the clip pushes it against this piece of wood, and it then keeps it upright because the wood is vertical. And being wood and plastic, it will never scratch or mark the phone because it's a softer material than what the phone is made out of.
Okay, so I've got a foldable.
Okay.
What do we do with that?
Well, we actually have got some thicker slots here just for that occasion. So do you want to do the honours, see if it fits?
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Perfect.
Okay, I've got a different one here. Okay. This right here is the thinnest phone in the world. Is this going to work?
I believe so, yes, if my calculations are correct.
That works too. I can't even imagine how this is going to look when there's 600 phones in there.
Pretty insane.
There's going to be nothing in the world like it.
Before we add all the phones though, it's time for a very important moment. The Great Peel, which is more fun than it should be.
I'm so excited about this. Oh! Have you ever seen something this satisfying before? Look at that!
There we go. Some fun.
We all underestimated how long getting the phones inside this thing would take. But teamwork is key, and it's extremely satisfying getting them all in order and with a degree of categorization. The phones are shown off really rather nicely thanks to them being tidy now, but things are about to get somewhat more visually spectacular as it's time to try out the selection system, which Aaron is presently unaware of. So Aaron, we've solved a massive issue with this already, but let's say you want to find a phone quickly. Pick a phone, any phone.
Nokia 9. Oh!
There you go.
What?
So we've got a database, we can update it with any phone you like, you can change it as you want, and it will highlight that phone when selected from a server, all running independently on the shelf.
That is amazing.
And it doesn't stop here. You're not going to obviously need to select phones all the time, and this is such an impressive selection that it really deserves showing off. So, are you ready?
think so.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
What? Oh my god! You smashed it. That's oh.
It's pretty wild. The vibrancy of this idling mode really catches the eye, and it shows off such a one-of-a-kind collection beautifully, and it just serves as an example of how it's possible to solve even the most niche of situations by taking DIY to the extreme. So this is without a doubt the biggest project I've ever worked on the channel, and I really do think that the result speaks for itself. So a big thank you obviously has to go to Lamar for doing the programming for this thing, and to Aaron for giving me the opportunity to make something as crazy as this.
Don't know why. It's the centerpiece of my house.
And I hope you guys have enjoyed watching it. So don't forget to check out some of my other videos if you're interested in this kind of thing, and maybe subscribe if you do. And of course, check out Aaron's stuff as well. But other than that, from us all, goodbye for now.